How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today we're talking about camo concealment and how you can use it to increase your view range and stuff like that, to be able to outspot opponents and deal better damage in every single game that you play in. Use the mechanics given to you, and just maximize your games to be able to do the best you can possibly do. So first things first, obviously we need some equipment to best suit our class or like our objective. If we're trying to remain stealthy, if we're trying to use our vision, then we're going to need some view range equipment. So that will be in the form of advanced optics. This has replaced what used to be binocs and coated optics, so that's just been called advanced optics. So that increases your view range by 10%, so you'll be able to spot vehicles 10% further away than you previously could. So that's really, really vital in order to have the best game possible in terms of spotting and to outspot opponents. And then you need advanced concealment to increase the concealment rating of your tank, decrease the ability for enemies to spot you, and therefore you're going to be able to remain undetected and outspot opponents and use that information to be able to put yourself in a position where they're not going to be able to shoot you when you're spotted or when you're not spotted, and just continually farm them whilst relocating to have the best game possible. So we're going to have a look at some gameplay and some perks that you need in order to sustain this kind of meta or this kind of play style, and we'll just go over them in just a second right now. So the key perk that you do need is you need camo expertise. Now, camo expertise basically increases your concealment factor or camo factor by 10%, which means it's 10% harder to find you as opposed to the standard variant of your tank without it. That's really, really important because, if someone else has got it on there, they're going to spot you 10% easier, and you probably won't spot them if you're at the same distance where, you're not able to be spotted and they are, or whatever. Then we've got muffled shot. Muffled shot's highly good or highly useful for being able to fire in a bush when you're not actually, or when you would get spotted if you fired, because firing whilst you're not spotted means that your kind of bloom or your area that you can be spotted increases. So if you fire, you're more likely to get spotted than if you don't fire at all. So sometimes it's worth not firing until you know the opponent is in a position where they cannot see you, or where they're far enough away that it doesn't matter whether you fire or not. So sometimes firing first straight away is not always the best option, and especially if you want to let them come out a little bit to be able to track them and stuff like that, because if someone pokes over a ridge, you don't want to just fire because you're probably not going to hit them, you're going to get probably spotted, and you want to wait for them to get a little bit too much confident. They're going to come up, and then you can put shots into them easier and also more regular. You might even be able to squeeze in 2 shots in the same amount of time. Then what you also want is you want green thumb, which is really, really good actually. And basically green thumb increases your concealment by 10% when you're in a bush. So you'll get the 10% from the camo expertise, you'll get the muffled shot, so when you fire within that bush, you're not going to get spotted as easily. And also when you have this, you get an extra 10% concealment. So you're going to be like 20% more concealed than without them. So yeah, you're going to be able to outspot the opponents if they're at a range, where you can, if they don't have the same thing and you're at the same distance. So yeah, it's really, really good. And then silent driving is really useful on non-light tanks, because it doesn't work on light tanks because you don't have, or there is no effect on driving on your vehicle's camo factor. So with most other tanks, or every single other tank, if you move, it will bloom out the area that you'll get spotted, so you're more likely to get spotted when you're on the move, because it increases your or decreases your camo factor, which basically means other people are able to spot you easier. So this will mean that you can relocate without getting spotted, which is really useful for retreating. And say if someone's coming towards you and you know that you're likely to get spotted, if you've left it too long, you can still retreat without being spotted, because remember, when you move, it blooms out that distance that they can spot you, which means that when you move, often if you haven't left early enough, they're already in that range. Yeah, you might not be spotted currently, but what happens is when you move, it blooms out and then they spot you straight away. So you've got to move early enough to be able to not get spotted straight away. And that's the kind of things you want on a tank where you're trying to increase your view range. We're going to have a look at a gameplay in a bit to be able to show you and highlight bushes and what you can use, and some clips that are going to be really useful for that. And then obviously you want to have view range as well. So in the form of situational awareness. Now that increases your view range by 6%, which is absolutely fantastic. And any boost to view range is always good because it just means that you'll outspot the opponent without them spotting you, more than likely. So there you go. Those are the perks and the equipment that you'll need in order to maximise your camo. Obviously you do take negatives if you take all of the camo and all of the camo equipment, but it does maximise your camo kind of ability to be able to remain undetected. Now note that this is not going to work on heavy tanks. If you're in a heavy tank, you're probably going to get spotted anyway, regardless of whether you have all of the camo perks on. Would I recommend it on mediums? Yes, probably. If you're fast enough and you're in a small enough one, you kind of need to look at the concealment rating of your tank to begin with before you decide realistically if it's worth putting them on. If your still concealment to begin with is around 300 meters, then it's probably worth putting all of these on to just reduce it to something minuscule. If it's around like 350 or 340, then it could be worth it for you. But just note that you might get outspotted by light tanks. Probably not if you're stationary, but you might get outspotted if you aren't stationary. So yeah, be aware of that. We're going to move into the gameplay now. So the first gameplay we have here is on Kaunas, or Kunas, or Kaunas. And it's in the E25 because it's just a tank that's easy to explain and easy to use in terms of camo. Yeah, just because it has pretty broken camo. And what you need to do is just move around the map. You need to understand that staying in one bush is not always good. Yeah, you might have the best camo, but if there's no one to shoot or there's no one near you, then you can't use your camo. So what you need to do is move around the map, use your kind of situational awareness in actual real life in terms of, you're going to have to move sometimes. It's not as simple as just like, sitting somewhere and just hoping that the enemies will come to you, because sometimes you have to go to the enemies, use some bushes to be able to do that, just like I'm doing right now. So basically if anything's in front of me, I should not get spotted when I fire, because there is that bush. And you'll see here in just a second what you can do is when you're in the bush fully, you won't get spotted necessarily, but when you pull back behind the bush, it makes it so much harder for the enemies to actually hit you or see you even. So remember, when you pull back from a bush and fire, it's so much better than if you don't. So it won't increase your the chance of you getting hit. So it's basically, if you pull back behind the bush, you won't get spotted very easily when you fire anyway. So what we're doing here now is we're just using this bush to get in cover. We know that the E25 is probably going to come around. He's not knowing that we're here, so we're going to hit him once, we're going to hit him twice, and we're just going to keep hitting him. And hope that he doesn't hit us. Unfortunately, he hits us with one shot, but that's not too much of a problem, because I think he was firing HE for some reason, only did 50 damage to us. Don't quite understand the HE E25, but okay. So now what we do is we realise that we're losing the town, so I'm going to relocate now. And this is key. You need to relocate in your stealthy tanks, because if you don't put yourself in a position where you're going to be the best or the most useful, then it doesn't matter what you're doing any other time, because you're not going to be able to be undetected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push over this tree up here. Yes, it alerts people to the fact that I might be up here, but it's not too bad. We're going to just hit this VK. He's never going to spot us here. You see that my still concealment in the bottom right hand corner, the little circle, tells me that I'm not going to get spotted. So you'll see when I fire, you'll see that it blooms out. So as I'm firing, you'll see that the little circular circle will get bigger every single time I fire. And what that tells me is that when I fire, the maximum view range I'm going to get spotted by is if they're within my little circle. Now, because it doesn't take into account if you're behind a bush though. So yes, that's if I'm in an open field. I'll know that I'm going to get spotted. But you can see right here, I'm about to fire at this AMX-13 75. But luckily there's both this bush and the bush that he was behind. So if there's one bush, say I'm in this bush, using this bush in front of me, because the VK was behind another tree, it means that it's impossible for him to spot me. So that's always good. So you need to make sure that if you can double bush, which basically means that there's two bushes in front of you before he's able to hit you. So that means you won't get spotted as easily, which is great, and that's something you always want in a tank like this. You can see that we've racked up a massive amount of damage. Most of it was when we weren't spotted on those people crossing. Obviously there's the AMX-1375 that's pushing up. We've taken him out of the game, and now it's time to move to get any more damage in this game before it ends. So it's really a case of using your spotting, using these bushes, using the fact that if you pull back behind the bush you won't get spotted when you fire, unless they're really close or they've got really good view range. Light tanks, you probably don't want to do that because it's probably not worth it. And you just need to make sure that you do whatever you can to stay and remain undetected in a tank like the E25, the Scorpion G, anything that is basically a glassed cannon. You need to make sure that you stay undetected, because if you're not detected you ain't going to get shot. So you see this Skoda actually has terrible view range. We do try and pull back behind this bush over here. But he is going to pepper us with a couple of shots, but he's dealing pretty much the same amount of damage as we're dealing to him, except I'm doing it faster. And that's got an autoloader, so yeah. Now I'm going to go and help with the TD, but he gets shut down. So although we have kind of been pumped by the Skoda T25, it's not really mattered that much in terms of my hit points, because we've still got plenty left to end out the game on. And when there's 4 of us left alive and there's only 2 tanks left alive on the enemy team, more than confident to be able to win this one. We go down here and the Arty gets spotted up there, and we're just going to take him out of the game, put one into him, second one into him, and he's out of the game. So, we've racked up 4,000 damage in the tier 7 just because of the spotting. I mean, I don't need to stay spotted here. I should be really shooting this guy, but I did want to track him to make sure he didn't just escape away by reversing back behind that hill. I'm waiting because I thought I was on for a decent one here. Seems to be a lot of E25s firing HE, and that's just never worth doing. Fire your premium rounds if you need to, but you definitely don't need HE against other E25s. I don't know what that's about. We did pick up 4,525 damage, 2,100 base XP and 7 kills in this game. Picked up a lot of silver too, but one of them was because of the op, so it wasn't that much that we earned, but it was a decent amount. Mastery badge, Devastator medal, Top Gun, everything like that. Not a bad game in the E25. Now, I hope you guys did kind of get the gist of this video and kind of got what I meant by, increasing your vision. The circles in the bottom right hand corner of your screen and that little cone, the cone indicates obviously your view range, so where you're able to move about the game. So when if you increase that cone, it's really good, because you'll be able to spot enemies within that range. And also, if that little white dotted circle or white dash circle, that is where you're going to get spotted from. So if your cone is lower than your dash circle means you're going to get outspotted pretty much every single time by any other tank, unless you're really, really close to them, at which point you'll just spot each other. But yeah, so if you're in the game to outspot opponents, it's really crucial that your cone is much bigger than your circle. So yeah, that's a simplified version of what we've just talked about and the gameplay. But yeah, make sure you use those bushes as well. Make sure you pull back behind the bush before you fire, because it makes it a lot harder for the enemy to spot you. If you're in the bush and you just fire, it's not as good. So make sure that you pull back behind the bush when you fire, if you can. If not, then just fire and then pull back as far as possible so that you can't get hit. But there we go. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I hope it kind of gave you a little bit of an inclination as to how to use the view range, camo, concealment, and pretty much everything to outspot your opponents and outgun and outplay some of the opponents in the game. Sorry that 2 videos have been E25, but it's just a good example of how you can use it. This one was a bit more focused on singular play. It was only me on my own and not kind of just being broken in a group of 3. So other than that, I hope you guys do have a great rest of your day. If you want to check out some of the other content on the channel, then do so on screen right now. If not, subscribe to the channel for more, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.